There is so much intense emotional energy around at the moment, both at a global collective level and also at a very individual level. I think an awful lot of people have seen a lot of uncertainty over the past few months, and it's really unsettling and very anxiety provoking. And I suppose it's recognizing that it is giving us an opportunity to challenge our relationship with uncertainty, to challenge our relationship with ourselves and with other people. I mean, ultimately, there's very little that we have control over, and we need to put our focus on what we can exert control over, and that is understanding and creating an awareness of our internal experience, on why it is we feel how we feel, why it is that we interpret things a certain way, and how we can show up to the world as a better person. And we tend to kind of approach this from a very grandiose level, and we go on these 3-day mindfulness retreats assuming that we're going to come back a completely different person. And the reality is all of these things are very subtle and very basic, and we need to keep it local. We need to first of all recognize that it doesn't matter what we're doing outside of our home. We need to tidy up, our most basic relationships, our relationship with our kids and our relationship with our partners. And oftentimes our past pain and our unresolved issues show up in our relationships with our significant others, So we owe it to ourselves and we owe it to our partners to recognize what it is that we bring to the table, and the triggers that we have, and the pain that we have, and the incapacity we have when it comes to vulnerability and emotional connection, our physical connection, just any of the walls that stand in the way of an honest and loving relationship. And I suppose both parties need to be willing, both parties need to be very open to doing the work. I mean, we all have different attachment styles. Some of us are more secure in relationships, some of us are that little bit more insecure, some of us really struggle with letting our guard down and can be quite defensive. And it's taking the time to find out what type of person you are in a relationship, why you are like that, and how you can have your needs met but also recognize the needs of your partner. And the funny thing is, we tend to recreate the patterns from our childhood in our adult relationships. We tend to kind of nearly seek out people who are not going to be able to meet the needs that we didn't have met in our childhood, and consequently we're always feeling frustrated. We always feel like as if our partner is to blame. But it's recognizing that no relationship will come without triggers or without conflict, and you have a choice at any given time. You can try to distract yourself, you can continuously experience conflict in your relationship, you can project all of your pain onto your partner and deny what's going on, or you can see it as an opportunity to grow and to evolve, both as individuals and as a unit. And it's recognizing that some things cannot be fixed, and sometimes relationships cannot be fixed. But where there's a willingness, and where there's a humility and an honesty and an openness and love, then there is always room to grow together. There is always room to create a deeper meaning together. And there is always room to become more evolved people as a result. Because again, you can spend a lifetime running from relationship to relationship and never do the healing work. Or you can use the relationship to crack open all of your wounds and allow the light in, allow yourself to heal, allow yourself to transcend what it is that you've carried throughout your life and generally from your childhood. And it's recognizing that you have to be kind to the person you're with. I mean, again, as I said, it's all very fine and well being a kind person outside of the home, but if you can't be appreciative, pay attention, really listen to your partner, then what good is it? And I suppose it's recognizing that you tend to always see things from your own perspective, and trying to take yourself out of that myopic place and to see things from your partner's perspective too. I mean, it's trying to see things from their eyes. And when it comes to conflict resolution, I mean, we first of all need to approach things with what John Gottman refers to as a soft startup. And this is coming from a very loving, kind place. We tend to try to resolve conflict in the middle of conflict, and couples tend to have the same arguments over and over again. They may sound different, but it's the same underlying theme. I don't feel heard, I don't feel appreciated, I don't feel recognized, you know. So at least if the two of you come to a very neutral place and say, look, we continue to have this same argument again and again, how can we go about resolving this? And a willingness to be honest and a willingness to be accountable and take responsibility for your role, because anything within a relationship is co-created. It's never one person's fault, you know. So you have to be willing to see things from the other person's point of view. And so a soft startup is fantastic. Also, I suppose scheduling when you do this, you know, not having kids running in and out, making sure that there's no alcohol consumed, making sure that you're in a good place to have this conversation and that you both approach it from a place of love as opposed to a place of shame and blame. You know, it needs to be done in kindness. And an important part of these connections and these conversations is about being able to mirror what your partner is saying. Now, we tend to assume that when we hear our partner, we know what they mean, but the reality is we interpret what they mean. So we need to check that we're actually understanding what they're saying by reiterating what they just said. And this can be such a fantastic tool because, again, as I said, there's always, you know, what is said, and then there's the interpretation and the assumption that the other person has heard and has taken on board. And this is where so much misunderstanding takes place. So really asking the other person, you know, okay, can I just check what you mean by that, you know, and again, this just makes the other person feel like they're really being listened to. And then validate what they're saying. Now, validation does not mean that you agree with them or that you approve of what they're saying. It just means that you hear their point and that you're allowing it as opposed to straight away dismissing it. And also try to empathize with their point. Again, this doesn't mean that you feel the same way, but that you recognize how they feel and you have compassion for how they feel. And in order to be able to do this, we need to come from a place of compassion for the self, you know, and this involves a lot of work on ourselves and recognizing the wounds that we carry with us and recognizing the way in which our childhood impacts on the way we interpret our partner. And you know, that it requires a lot of work, and generally it's done with a therapist, and it is so rewarding and it can transform your relationship. But again, as I said, both people need to be very willing and open to doing that sort of work in order to bring the relationship to a higher level. And I suppose one act, if you're going to kind of promote that sort of mindset, is a loving kindness meditation. And it's very much a Buddhist concept where you meditate and send loving kindness to yourself, to a person who's neutral, to a person who you love, and to a person who you really dislike. And the more we practice something like that, the more we dissolve the ego, the more we recognize that literally our only purpose in life is to try and find love in everything that we do, to move beyond the ego, to try to heal any pain, and to become a more compassionate person, a kinder person to ourselves, to stop our kind of compulsion to completely self-abandon and self-sabotage in both to ourselves and in our relationships, and just to find a place of equanimity and peace and kindness. And I mean, ultimately, if we do that on an individual basis, it will transform the world, because once you have a loving mindset and perspective towards yourself and towards your partner, it extrapolates then outside of your relationship to every single person that you meet. And God knows the world needs more of that at the minute. Hope everyone's having a great day. I will talk to you again soon.